Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Abilities Podcast. I am your host, Nick Gilboord, and we are here to encourage each other to find our own unique abilities. Let's go. All right, everyone. So today we have Eric, and this guy is phenomenal. And, I'm just going to let him tell you what he does. So, Eric, can you tell the audience what you do?
Sure. Basically what I do is I help typically 50-plus-year-old, 50 to 75-year-old business owners prepare their business for sale, and then we help them sell their business. And there's two ways that we do that. We have Sell Your Business for More system, which takes you through a process to get yourself, the owner, and the business ready to do a sale faster, more efficiently, and with less stress, which is the key one. Warren BDC is our site and our company that actually sells businesses. So if you're ready to sell, you can come to warrenbdc.com and we can talk about actually selling your company. And our process is we help the owner figure out where it is that they want to go. We show them some options that perhaps they weren't aware of before. We help them get to where they want to go to. And, our job is to help them get ready, find buyers, negotiate the deals, and work through the whole process with the seller so they can go from beginning to end and get into that next great phase of their life.
Awesome. And as someone who has sold a business, me and my family, we sold our business, and I wish I would have had you because it was so stressful. We didn't know what we were doing. And in the end, honestly, it didn't work out very good. So, it's important to have somebody that knows what they're doing, help you through the process.
Well, if this makes you feel any better, 80% of businesses don't sell. So you'd be in the 20% if you did sell successfully. And 90% of owners, that's 90%, are not prepared to sell their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, one of the things that I've learned is it's always good to have, your plan to, what the dollar amount is when you're going to sell. And when you hit that amount, sell, always have that in mind when you start your business and as you grow it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the first things that we do with a seller is we work with them to figure out what is a reasonable price to sell the business for, something that's an attainable price. Now, you always like to reach a little bit more, but if you get agreement up front with the seller and ourselves or any intermediary, whether it's an M&A firm or a business broker or what have you, you should up front understand and what the backup is to that decision for that price, because it's mathematics. I mean, it comes down to if a business is running a certain way, if it's making a certain amount of profit, there's a lot of factors, but you should be able to talk through those factors and determine a price that everybody's comfortable with. And then you go to the marketplace. And like anything, at the end of the day, the marketplace will determine what it's really worth, because it's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for.
Yep, exactly. And I know, like with our business, it was sold for a lot less than it was evaluated at, which is unfortunate, but things happen. Me and my family are okay. So all in all, it worked out, just not like we thought.
Yeah, if it had been, if I had been around, or if I was just, not even selling your business, but you called from, a coaching standpoint, I would have strongly recommended you get at least 3 different quotes from intermediaries, and you would ask them price, obviously what they think they could sell for, but you would also ask them exactly what it is they were going to do for you. Like they should be able to lay it out in front of you what's going to happen.
Yeah, and we didn't really get that. It was a complete mess. But, everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that. And, we sold our business. Unfortunately, we sold it because my dad passed away.
Hmm.
But if all of that were to happen, I wouldn't be on the path that I'm on now. I wouldn't have my own
Okay.
business. I wouldn't be helping people. So, I always try to look at that, silver lining in every unfortunate situation.
It's all a learning experience. It's all the path, and
Yep.
you're where you need to be, and that's the important thing.
Yep. Exactly. So when people go to your website, we can pull it up on screen. Where should they go to contact you or just to get more information?
If they go to the Warren site, there's a contact button in the navigation bar. So it's a
Awesome.
very, very simple contact form, name, address, phone number, that kind of thing, and then we'll get in touch with them right away. So if you go to
Awesome.
the nav bar and contact, that's it. There you go. And so
Awesome.
that's a
Easy.
confidential, one-on-one, very personal conversation between myself and the seller. And as you
Awesome.
can see, we care as much about the seller as we do about the business. Sometimes people in my business don't necessarily worry about the seller. It's very
Mm-hmm.
important for us. In fact, we spend a lot of time up front just dealing with what's going on inside the head of the seller. And the
Yep.
businesses, you can figure businesses out pretty quickly. You can figure out what needs to be done. You can figure out, if you wanted to increase the value of it, here you can do this, this, and this. But getting inside the head of the seller and understanding what's motivating them, understanding, what they know, what they don't know. Often sellers don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
And the other statistic is, you know, for the most part, I would say 95 or more percent of sellers, this is the first time they've sold a business. So they're in a whole world that is very, very different for them. And
Yep.
if they don't
And
have the right path guide, then they can be in real trouble.
yeah, exactly. Like I said, I know that firsthand. It's not a fun thing to go through. With someone with your guidance, it sounds like you make it as easy and stress free as possible. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and when you first sit down with a seller, what's the first step that you take with them?
You know what? I typically ask a question, tell me about yourself, tell me about your business. And the principle of speaking 20% or listening 80% and speaking 20%, that's what I do. So I just listen. And typically, if you're dealing with boomer age or, 50-plus-year-old sellers, they have an hour's worth of story, backstory they want to tell you. So you just be quiet and you listen respectfully, and they'll lay out kind of everything that's happening. They'll tell you how, some of their children are involved in the business, some of their children are not involved, how their spouse might be involved in the business, what they really think about their partner, what it is that they're trying to achieve. I find that maybe it's just my personality, but people like to talk and they like to unload on just what's going through their head. And typically they can't sit down with their employees necessarily. It's okay to talk to your spouse, but if your spouse has no, business experience, and particularly no experience in this, it becomes kind of not a great conversation. So when they meet someone like myself, they meet someone who actually understands what's going on, and I can prod them a little bit in terms of giving me the kind of information I need. But it's basically, I just sit down and say, "How can I help you?" And they just kind of talk.
I really like that because you earn their trust right away, and as you know, in business, the more people trust and like you, the better things are all around for you and the customer.
Well, it helps that it's all very genuine. I really do care, and I
Yep.
care, like I said earlier, I care about the person as much or more than the business. So it's all very genuine.
Yeah, that's good. And the broker that we had, it's just right from the get go. I felt something was wrong. You know, it was like he was trying to care too much, where it was basically fake, and made all these promises. And once the sale happened, we never heard from him again. and he told us that he was gonna, invite us into his home and celebrate and all of that, and nothing ever happened.
Really?
Oh yeah,
No.
yep. So
Good.
it's good to have someone genuine like you, where you actually care. You want to help the people, and you're not just looking for a paycheck. You're looking to actually help people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I created the Sell Your Business for More system, to get all that experience and knowledge out of my head into a system that's pretty easy for the average person, who, especially the person who's running a business and doesn't know how to sell, to follow the lessons and the tasks. And what they'll do is they'll get the business ready for sale. They'll put themselves in a better position to hire a better intermediary. And so an intermediary is either an M&A person or business broker. We're a boutique M&A shop. We're not brokers per se. But if you follow the lessons that we have, you'll get your business better suited to sell. You'll find the better intermediary. And as a bonus, you'll increase the value of the business because of some of the lessons. You'll increase the value of the business, and in all likelihood, you'll sell for that much more. And,
Yep.
one of the things that people should know is that they've heard this expression EBITDA, which is usually just a business model to determine, price of a company. But what they don't think about is that typically you're going to sell your business, typically, not always, but you're going to sell your business for four times EBITDA. So the reality is, if you could increase your EBITDA from 1,000 to 500,000, which frankly isn't that difficult if you follow some of the lessons that we have in the program or follow some of my advice, do you realize that if you increase it by 100,000, you've now put 400,000 in your jeans?
Yep.
Now, to some
Exactly.
people, that's life-changing money.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely. And you have a website for that program, right?
Yes, it's the
Yep.
ericgilboard.com. Otherwise, you can get it at syb4m.com or simply sellyourbusinessformore.com. All three ways could get you there. It's the number
Awesome.
4.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Good. Good deal. And yeah, I think that's really cool that you have, just a resource for someone to start helping the process on their own, you know? And yeah, I think that's really, really cool. So when you sell a business, what's the most valuable aspect in the business usually?
Customers.
Yep.
Customers are key. Staff is key. Intellectual property is important. Sometimes, a seller will say to you, we couldn't get our equipment to do X, so we jerry-rigged it, or we created something, or we had something made for us that allowed our widget maker to do twice as many widgets. And what they don't realize is potentially patentable. And so they've never thought about patenting it. They've just thought of it as a useful extension to what they're doing. But the truth is, if it was patentable and they did do that, well, they've got additional value in their business. So when they are selling the company, it's worth that much more.
Yeah. And I know about that because we had a waste removal company. And with that, you have routes that the drivers follow. And my dad, he created like the outline for the route and created all of that. And that wasn't something that we sold. That just went with it. So like with what you're saying, like we could patented that and, had the value to just that specific thing alone.
It's entirely possible, and it may not have, doubled the value of the business.
No.
Maybe it added 10%. Maybe it added enough just to make a buyer think twice and say, yeah, I'm willing to pay a little bit of a premium for that.
Hmm. And I know, like, thinking back now, like, I was shocked when we started the whole process to learn that, the equipment, like all the trucks and tractors and all that wasn't that valuable compared to the customer list. That was the value. So I found that really interesting when we did that. And then now as a business coach, I'm learning like how valuable your list is. It's just truly incredible.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I mean, we talked earlier about increasing the EBITDA, and I'll give you a combination tip of customers and EBITDA increasing. What I've said many times to sellers is, do you think your customers know everything that you do? And the answer typically is, oh, yeah, sure. I mean, they know we do all these things. And the reality is, no, they don't, not even close. So if you did a one pager that said, did you know, and bullet point, it listed all the things that your business does, and maybe highlight some of the things that they don't know that you do that are, that are valuable, you'd immediately start to increase the value of your company, because you would immediately, with one simple email or letter that you sent out. Now, you want to make that work even harder? Get on the phone and call them and say, did you
Hmm.
get our letter? Did you get our email? Did you realize that we do all these things? Can we come in and talk about doing this, this, and this? These are very, very simple, small things that one can do to have a big impact on the value of the business.
Yep, that's for sure. And a lot of business owners miss the simple fact of picking up the phone and calling your customer. As you know, me and Kyle, we do that. We called you the other day, and now here we are. It's all about just staying in touch and giving people that personal touch that really goes a long ways.
For sure. Absolutely.
So, what got you into this industry yourself?
I grew up in national and international ad agencies for the first half of my career in marketing agencies, and did that for two and a half decades. And then I started my own company called Soho Marketing, and this was in, oh God, or 94. So at the leading edge of, quote unquote, this thing called Soho, and worked
Yep.
with a lot of businesses. Realized quickly that small office, home office didn't really have budgets for marketing, but
Hmm.
larger companies, small and medium sized companies did. So that's where I gravitated, and did that for a couple of decades. And what I found was, I would say to the head of marketing for XYZ company, so when are you guys planning on selling? And he would look at me and go, how did you know? Well, the owner's of a certain age, your company's a certain size. There's a couple of things that are leading to that kind of conclusion. He said, yeah, we actually are. So I started working with owners to talk about selling, because when I originally worked with the owners, they were in their 40s, maybe 50. As a couple of decades went by, they decided to, age. Nature helped them age, and the 50-year-old became 60 or 70. So as I'm working with owners that are in their 50s and maybe 60s, this whole subject of selling a business, came up, and I started working with them on that basis. And then I started selling companies, and it was, a learning curve at the beginning. I'd never done anything like that before. But what I truly discovered was, it's not that complicated. Sure, due diligence and the financials and all that, I'm not going to say that's not complex. It is, and you have experts to deal with that. But what I learned was, my job is to be a matchmaker. My job was to connect the dots, find the seller, determine what's, in the best interest of the seller, and in the best interest of the company and the employees and the customers, because those are all important.
Hmm.
Find a buyer who matches up nicely with that seller, so that you've got, a compatible situation between buyer and seller that works for them. It works for the customers. It works for the staff. It works for the vendors. It
Yep.
works for everyone. And that's the best of all worlds.
Awesome. And I also know that you wrote a few books. Do you want to give us the title to a few of those so people
I
can
wrote
go
a
and
book
check them out?
called, sure, I wrote a book called Moving Forward, which is kind of a precursor to my Sell Your Business for More system. Some of the elements from the Sell Your Business for More came from the book. A lot more was added. But that was, it's a quick, easy read, an hour or two, to bring an owner, a seller, up to speed on the world of selling a business right now. And we're not talking about, Fortune 500 companies. I'm talking about small and lower middle sized companies. So it's all very, very relatable. I wrote a bestseller several years ago called Just Tell Me What to Do, Easy Marketing Tips for Small Business. So that did very, very well. In fact, Sprint, this was several years ago, Sprint bought 10,000 copies and gave them out as part of a direct marketing campaign.
That's cool.
And then I did an update to that called Just Tell Me More. So it was a little more updated. It added social media into it. And it's old school marketing. That's what Just Tell Me More is. And they're both available on Amazon, but it's old school marketing. It's not, there we go. It's not the, all the new stuff that are people doing right now. There's lots of content out there, of the new stuff, social media and all that. What we did was we integrated social media as we could from a few years ago, but it's more about strategy and about copywriting and about, different marketing ideas and different marketing tricks, lots of cases, so you can read and relate to lots of different things that we're suggesting in the book. So I find it a very helpful book if you've not really done much marketing, or let's say you have some people in your company that are doing the marketing, for you. Maybe you promoted somebody in sales to take care of some marketing. It's a good step up for them to understand various things they could do right now for your company.
That's really awesome. And I get your books myself because I always want to learn more about marketing. It's such an interesting topic. Like, there's so many different things you can do, and there's so many things that you can do wrong. So I want to learn what not to do. And with that, what are a few tips that you could give a small business owner on how to market better?
God, there's so many things that they can do. One of the key things is to make sure, this is going to sound silly, but to make sure that your staff, particularly your salespeople, are all on the same page. I did an exercise years ago with an owner, and we had his 8 or 10 salespeople come in one at a time and pitch us as if we were a customer. And some people did okay. Some people, believe it or not, were way off base with what they said. There was one sales guy came in, made a bunch of claims in this, kind of fake pitch. And the owner turned to me afterwards, after the guy left the room, and said, "We haven't done that in 10 years. What they're doing is they're out misrepresenting the company. They're missing the opportunities, and they're saying the wrong things about the marketing materials. You want to get good quality marketing materials made. I used to say to people years ago when I was doing marketing stuff, I could tell if a brochure was made by a printer or made by a copywriter or made by a designer, just because of the look of it. And it was pretty easy. I mean, if it was made by a printer, there's typically black and white. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 color. If it was made by a printer, it typically had a special 5th color. No apparent reason. It's not like they really needed it. It's because that was something the printers could do, and they could, make it look special and jack up the price. If it was made by a copywriter, it wouldn't have a whole lot of design to it, but a ton of words. And if it was made by a designer, it wouldn't have much copy. It would be just a bunch of pictures. So you need all those different, you need strategy, you need copy, and you need design. So that would be the key is, and whether it's a website or a brochure or email or what have you, there's lots of experts out there. Ask them to prove their expertise to you. Start off small. Don't, and I underline the word don't, make a big commitment, because you don't know what's really going to happen. And unfortunately, there's an awful lot of people in the world that claim to be quote unquote marketing experts. In fact, everybody and their brother or sister claims to be a marketing expert. And unfortunately, they're not. It would be
Yeah,
nice if they were, but they're not.
I get messages and emails every day about how we can help you, grow and get more leads and all that. It's like, yeah, I know.
And they all sound the same. They all come from
Yeah,
the same the
that's the
same
thing.
school. Yeah, and they all
Yep,
want 15 grand up front, and it's just not
yep.
what you want to do.
And nowadays, like, especially when you're small, you can do a lot of it yourself. There's so many tools out there to help you market and create things. There's a website that we use called Canva, and in there you
Mhm.
can design just about anything. It's so nice.
Well, the key is the message. I mean, what is it that you're
Yeah,
really trying to say? With Sell Your Business for More, I think the title kind of says it all. Sell your business for more. It's, as close to, on point as you can possibly get. And that's the key. It's one thing to go out there and say a bunch of stuff. It's another thing to be very laser focused and be very clear on who it is that you're talking to.
yep,
You're not
exactly.
talking to everyone. You're talking to a specific audience with a very specific message.
Yeah,
And then
and
the other thing is, you know, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it for the price that you said you were going to do it for. That's all
yep.
people want. It's what I found in many, many decades of doing, marketing services. Frankly, a company owner, they just want you to do what you said you were going to do. No surprises.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. That's important to get what you want. Really
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you help business owners navigate the emotional side of selling the business? Because I know for us, like, yeah, that was, you know, next to, losing my dad, that was such a emotional thing. It was just so hard to let go of something that we have been doing for 10 years.
Yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster. I've written about this multiple times. If you go to the Sell Your Business for More website, look at the blogs. There's one called The Emotional Roller Coaster. You go to the Warren site, there's also a bunch of blogs. And you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter. But to answer your question specifically, that's probably one of the key things, one of the key challenges. We tell sellers right up front, it's an emotional roller coaster. You will want to kill someone as this moves along.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have walked people back from the ledge on many occasions. All
Hmm.
that said, once the business is sold, more often than not, the seller will say to us, remember what you said about walking me off the ledge? Well, thank you, because that helped get me through the difficult time. Because they'll say over and over again, you are absolutely right. Thank you for warning me about the
Hmm.
emotional roller coaster. And that's a key thing. It's ruined many a deal because people didn't respect, you know, what a seller was looking for. And a seller sometimes didn't respect what a buyer was looking for. It's about
Yeah.
honesty. It's about transparency. And it's about there's no way to do this without having an element of emotion. There just
Hmm.
isn't, because the cliche is this business is my baby. Well, it frankly is. And if you've done it for, like a lot of our sellers, they've done it for 30 years, maybe 40 years. It's their whole life. There's something called the blood family, which is your normal family. And then there's your business family, and some people know their business family better than they know their blood family, because these are
Yeah.
people they're with every day, every week, eight,
Hmm.
10 hours a day. they, they know them better than they know their own family. So to leave your other family, that's pretty, they can rock you off your feet pretty easily, because that's part of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know exactly what you're talking about because, like, our company wasn't just a job. It was us. It was what we did. It was such a big part of our lives. And all of the employees were all a big part of our lives. We still talk to them to this day. And it's been, what, 5 years now?
Their family. I
Yeah.
mean, I knew an owner years ago, very successful serial entrepreneur. I mean, really at a high level. And when
Hmm.
he sold his last company, what he did was he took the 5 or 6 more senior people in the business and or at least 5 or 6 people out of his employees that wanted to start their own business once he sold, and he funded their businesses. He was the
Wow.
investor for their business ventures as his way of
Really
saying
awesome.
thank you. And I encourage those kinds of things. I really do. I encourage philanthropy. I encourage, things that, I've had people say to me, an owner's wife once said to me, well, we don't have to sell for more. We have enough money. We have more than our friends do. We don't need any more money. Okay,
Yep.
that's interesting. It's wonderful that you have more than enough money, but instead of selling for $2 million, if you could sell for $3 million, and because you have enough money, you could take that extra million and give it to your church. You could, use it in any one of a number of philanthropic ways. You could help one of your children start a business. There's so many other things you can do. And my analogy is having a business, a successful business, and not taking it where it can be. It's like owning a Ferrari and taking it to the store for milk. You're not really doing what you could be doing with it. So we like to
Yep.
encourage those kinds of things. Here are ways that you can make the world a better place. And people like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And like for us, when we sold, so my family, we had three different companies, and one of the businesses, my dad was partnered with one of our employees in there. And when we sold the main company, we just let him take that over. We're like, you're the one that was doing most of the work with my dad.
Nice.
It's yours. You can just take it and run with it. And it's nice to be able to do that type of thing.
Absolutely. And that's, by the way, not an unusual story. It's more common than you think that the owner, someone like your dad, partnered with one of the employees on a smaller venture. It's a
Yep,
very, very common kind of scenario. Giving
that's
them the
really
whole
cool.
business perhaps is a little bit less common, but
Yep,
but
yep,
having a business with them, it's very common.
yep. And we just wanted to help everyone as much as we could at that time. It's very hard on all of us. Yep.
Sure.
All right. Well, before we wrap this up, I gotta ask you. So my slogan is "Your abilities are infinite." What does that mean to you?
I guess everybody has lots of abilities open to them. In fact, I think that most people aren't aware of all the abilities that they have. They don't realize how great they could be at this or this. So it's an open concept world in terms
Hmm.
of abilities, and you've probably, you know, captured a small amount of them. That's what people tend to focus on. But it's like trying something new. If you try something new, you might find it something you love, and you might find it something that you're really good at.
Yep, I agree with that. Step outside of your comfort zone and experience more things. I love that. And what's one last message that you would like to leave the audience?
Well, what I would strongly recommend is that if you're, say, 60 plus years old, A, you're absolutely thinking about selling the business. And B, if you think it'll be a surprise to everyone, employees and vendors and customers, that you're going to sell the business, it's going to be no surprise. Because when you get to 65, 70, 75 years old, nobody's going to be surprised that you're selling the company. So oftentimes people who are, 70, 75 years old, oh, I don't want to say anything to anybody because they're going to be shocked that I'm selling. No, they're going to be shocked that you didn't sell 5 years earlier.
Yep, yep,
And I guess
exactly.
the last thing is everybody has their best before date. You know how you have it on milk, it's
Hmm.
best before date. Companies have a best before date. And oftentimes the reason why 80% of businesses don't sell because they've gone past their best before date.
Yep, I agree with that. A lot of business owners just have a hard time letting it go. You know what? We usually build businesses so we can enjoy life after, 50, 60 years old. So let's make sure that we make that happen.
Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
all right, Eric, this was really great. Thank you so much for being on the
Thank
show.
you. I've appreciated the time. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this show, please go ahead and share it on your Instagram story and tag me here, the Nick to Your Heart. Also, go ahead and share it anywhere else that you see fit, because the only way that I can grow this is by you guys sharing it. I don't sell anything on here. I don't have any sponsors, so let's just get it out there by word of mouth and help more people. Alright, everyone, remember, your abilities are infinite.